Good morning, everyone. This is Sherry Andrews, and today we are here for Let's Talk Legal. Every Tuesday morning at 10, Facebook Live, I'm bringing you nuggets of information for your business so that you have the legal information that you need to make sound business decisions. So today's topic is document retention. And before we get into it, if you're here with me live or if you're watching later on replay, please say hello in the comments just so I know you're here. I'd like to see who checks in. Um, and I'm going to have some other questions for you as we move forward. So, the first question that I actually have is, do you have a document retention policy for your business? And if not, have you even thought about a document retention policy? So if you've thought about it even, you can go ahead and answer yes in the comments. And if you haven't, that's okay, because today we're going to talk about um, why we're here and what document retention means for you. Good morning, Rachel. Nice to see you. So first, let's talk about what document retention is and why it matters. So the document retention is the systematic review, retention, and destruction of documents that are created or received in the normal course of business. When you're looking at document retention, the questions that you need to ask: is there a state or federal statute that mandates a specific retention period? You're typically going to find these in uh, mostly HR records. There's a whole lot of Code of Federal Regulations requirements for retention in that area. If there's not a state or federal statute, what is the statute of limitations for actions on the type of records we're discussing? So, let's say, for example, you have contracts. Well, if the statute of limitations on a contract is 2 years in your state, and this varies from state to state, then you're going to want to look at when does that contract end, what's 2 years after that period, and then just add a little cushion. So maybe you're going to want to make your retention period 3 years after the end of the contract. And if there's no statute of limitations that applies, then you can also look at just what are the industry best practices for retention periods. Now, why does all this matter? Why do you even want a document retention policy? Well, there's three main reasons. The first is business efficiency. So having a document retention policy means you've already thought about what documents your business creates and where they're stored so you can find them fairly easily when you need them for a specific purpose. For the people who kept on top of their accounting records, when the PPP loans came out, they were ready to go. And that's what you want to be striving for, is that you know your records well enough that you're ready to respond to whatever situation comes up. The second major reason for a document retention policy would be litigation protection. And there's two sides to this. The first side is retaining the records that you need in response to a litigation request. So, for example, if the IRS decides to audit your tax return, do you have all the backup documents for that return? Have you saved everything that you need to respond to that? On the other side of it is um, you don't want to keep things longer than you actually need to, because if you were to get a subpoena for your records in the course of litigation, whether you are a party to the litigation or not, your records can be subpoenaed. And if you get that subpoena, the more records you have that are responsive, the more expensive it's going to be for you to produce them. And when we look at that, we look at the cost that it's going to be for an attorney to review each individual record to see if it is responsive to the request and to see if there's any privilege that would keep it from being disclosed. And the third major reason for document retention policy is compliance. And we're talking about compliance with just all kinds of federal and state and local statutes and regulations. And I can't even begin to get into those because this would be, a 2 hour long talk instead of maybe a 10-minute talk. So, when you're thinking about document retention, how do you even go about getting started? I mean, this could be a very big area, or maybe you just don't create that many documents, and it could be relatively simple, but I wouldn't count on it. The first idea is to identify what documents you are creating and receiving in the normal course of business. So think about this, you're running a small business, you have contracts, you have email, you have financial records, so what you're spending out, what you're receiving in. Um, and depending on the type of business you're running, you may be creating content, those are records. You may be posting blogs, those become records. Basically, anything that you create or receive in the normal course of your business becomes a record. And you need to know how many different kinds of records you're creating. Then for each type of record, and you're going to want to group your records, kind of loosely. So all your financial records, all your employment records, all your tax records, all your business development records, and you group them. And then you look for each group, how long would you want to retain that group of records? And again, you're going to go back to, are there statutes or regulations requiring specific retention periods? Are there statutes of limitation that play in, or what are the industry best practices? And once you've determined your retention periods, you need to think about where and how you're storing your records. And that is going to be individual to every business, how you want to retain them. But you need to be thinking about that because that plays into the fourth part, which is when and how do these records get destroyed? And this is very important because when you get into a litigation process, you're going to want to know, um, where your records were kept and what retention periods you had, and were you following your policy in terms of destruction? Because if you're sued and the other side requests records from you that you don't have, you face the potential of what's called a spoliation claim, a claim that you basically intentionally got rid of records that might have been relevant to the cause of action. But if you got rid of records in the normal course of following your records retention and destruction policy, then that is an actual benefit to you because you don't have these extra records costing you money to produce, and you have a viable legal reason for why you don't have them. So that's just a real short primer on records retention and destruction. As you can see, there's a lot to think about, and you're going to want to really sit down and look at your own records and what you have and what you need. And then you may find you need legal help to determine what the correct retention periods are. So if you get to that point, consult with an attorney in your state to make sure that you're following all the state and federal regulations for your records retention policy. Now, one other thing, hi Joyce. One other thing I wanted to mention today is on Let's Talk Legal, I'm trying to provide information that's relevant and useful for your business. So if you have any burning questions that you would like considered for a future Let's Talk Legal episode, then please put them in the chat box and in the comments, and I will consider them for a future episode. So I'm Sherry Andrews. Yeah, I can't even say my name this morning. Here we go. I'm Sherry Andrews signing off of Let's Talk Legal for this week. Join us next week again, Tuesday at 10 a.m. Bye.